Guild Wars 2. Can you believe it's been 12 years since it first came out? I played it a bit back when it came out, and then again for 4 or so days a few years ago. I think I qualify as a brand new player, so you are now obligated to care about my opinion. And don't let me waste any time with that. The very first thing you need to do after you create a character as a new player is level up to 80. I, as a legacy new player, a legacy new player, already had a character at level 66 and 3 more characters at max level. But I wanted to do some leveling to see if I want to spend money on the expansions, so I stuck with the level 66 character. I didn't do much leveling, but I can tell you, it blows. Not as bad as most other MMOs I've played, but god damn it, I hate leveling. Here is how I see it in general. MMOs tend to be games where you can do a lot of different things, engage with different systems, choose your content. If I'm a game developer and I go into making an MMO with that design goal, why would I force someone to go through leveling just so they can unlock the other systems I've worked so hard to put in the game? It's not even the same kind of gameplay as the end game that it unlocks. You have to level to access your desired content, unless you're into structured PvP, where the game boosts everyone up to the same level with full and free access to the same gear, which is a fantastic design. Kudos for that one. Technically, you can play world versus world, but what are you going to do at level 25 in world versus world? Likely not having fun. And yes, some people enjoy going through the world and exploring the map and seeing different events and the small stories around the map. I enjoy those things too, sometimes. I just wish I could play that part of the game when I wanted to, and only if I wanted to. You know, like the rest of the systems in the game. If I don't want to do dungeons, raids, or PvP, I never have to. So why am I forced to go through leveling instead of it being just another option on the list? Alright, rant number 1 over. Great, I've leveled up. I've done the thing. Now the real game begins. Ish. Guild Wars 2, you see, operates on what is known as horizontal progression. To keep it short, what that means is that all content that has ever been released in the game is still relevant because there is no leveling past the initial level cap and there is no better gear being released as new content gets added. And that's great. It's a fantastic idea to have all the work that has gone into the game over 12 long years to still be relevant and not dead and forgotten. As a result, there's a dizzying amount of stuff you can do once you hit level 80, and that's exactly how I felt when I hit 80 and looked into what content is available. Dizzy. It's way too much for my smooth, pea-sized brain, so I started looking up videos on the subject, guides and what have you. I spent a day and a half watching videos on what is actually going on in the game and how things work, which tells you more about me than about the game if I'm being honest. Anyway, I chose a class, looked up a build online, and spent my legacy new player gold for some starter gear, then got busy farming for the rest of the gear, which everyone online says is so easy to get, I should just farm for it rather than spend money for the previous rarity. I'll try to keep it simple. You can buy and sell items of exotic rarity, but not items of ascended rarity, which is a small upgrade over exotic and also the best gear in the game when it comes to stats, on par with legendary, which I won't get into. Everyone says get exotic everything except trinkets, farm ascended trinkets. And that's all fine and good, but it turns out the easy to farm spots are Living World Season 3 and 4. To keep it short again, Living World is paid extra content. Think of it as DLC. You might have some of those without paying if you played when it was first released. That's my understanding of the situation. You already know where I'm going with that. I don't have access to Season 3. I can buy it for 200 premium currency gems, where 400 gems costs €5 or about 160 in-game gold. For more info on the gem store, watch a different video. I don't interact with it. Seems you can only somewhat pay to win there. It's probably alright. Now at that point I had already decided to buy the first 3 expansions, so I did not want to spend any extra coins on the game and my legacy player gold did not extend that far. So I decided to level up jewel crafting instead and make my own damn ascended trinkets. If you're a Guild Wars 2 player, you already know where this is going. Jewel crafting only goes to 400. They haven't made 500 jewel crafting yet. 400 is exotic gear, 500 is ascended. So I've got a bunch of exotic trinkets currently. But mister, I hear you say, what about leaving World 4? You only mentioned not having access to Season 3. Yes, good point. Do you remember when I said I have a small pea-sized brain? Yeah. I saw that I don't have access to Season 3 and I didn't bother checking Season 4. I do have access to it and I plan to get around to it soon-ish. More on that later. I spent the remainder of my legacy new player gold and what little I managed to farm as I was unlocking masteries and hero points to level armor smithing to 500. It should have been weaponsmithing. Everyone says ascended trinkets first, then weapons, then armor, and I'll probably end up doing that all the while rocking armor smithing 500, because by Grimnir's beard, crafting ascended gear costs a lot of doubloons. You may have noticed I mentioned masteries and hero points. Very observant of you. Treat yourself a nice cookie. It's time for rant number 2. Hero points are objectives where you either have to channel for a few seconds or murder some elite mob to earn a hero point, or 10 hero points if you do the ones in the expansion maps. You then use those hero points to unlock the talent trees and utility skills of different specializations, which is a negligible farm up until you decide to unlock the elite specializations gained from purchasing expansions. Those cost a lot of hero points to fully unlock, which is why expansion maps give you 10 hero points a pop. So I finished leveling, now I get to do something very similar in hero point hunting. While at it, I decided to merge that quest with the acquisition of masteries, which are permanent quality of life unlocks such as auto loot, glider to fend off foe damage, some new transportation methods in the different expansion maps, and so on. To unlock those masteries, you need to get mastery points gained by doing story chapters or finding them on the map like hero points and filling up a bar. Exactly like leveling. Refer to rant 1, I'm basically leveling up again. But technically, once I fully unlock my elite specialization, I should finally be able to engage with my content of choice, which, to begin with, is fractals. Massive multiplayer online role-playing games. The chore simulator that I always knew you are. You have bamboozled me yet again with technically correct promises of horizontal progression, no gameplay urgency by means of subscription fee, and short and smooth farming where you do require it. While we still remember that I was complaining about hero points farm, please allow me to tell you about the map design of the expansion called Heart of Thorns. In that expansion, you get the masteries for the aforementioned glider and bouncing mushrooms as well as a bunch of other map traversal masteries, which inevitably leads to map design that requires the use of said map traversal mechanisms, which inevitably leads to maps with more than one different levels, which inevitably leads to me running around like a headless fly trying to figure out if I'm able to reach the hero point I see on the map with my currently unlocked masteries. I had a longer rant emotionally laid out in my script, but because I respect your time, and because I don't want to risk sending myself to therapy, I will skip the rest of the details. All you need to know is that my mind is not a fortress. And now let us move to something more positive, slightly. I'll backtrack a bit to keep things coherent. We're back to where I just hit level 80 and got clotheslined by 12 years of accumulated horizontal progression, a gazillion currencies that can be spent for a variety of things at vendors scattered about the impressively large world of Guild Wars 2. Mostly in Last Arch, being fair, but not only, and if you own the Living World seasons, I believe you have to hunt down specific vendors in specific zones once you've done specific quests and earned some specific currency. It's a lot. Not very confusing, but a lot, which makes me confused. I spent the first day and a half after reaching level max going over guides to figure out what in the blazes is going on in this game. Because I can't just try random stuff out and switch if I don't like something. If I get gear for healer and spend my time unlocking an elite specialization, and then I decide that I want to do something else, guess what? I need to do all that again so I can try something else. And if I want to try a different class, well, I bought the expansions so I can get a couple of characters to level 80 instantly, and my account is also legacy new player account, so I can get a bunch of characters all the way to level 60, so I'd only have to go through 20 levels. But you get the point. It takes time to jump through all the hoops, so I can try something else that I might not enjoy. So I felt compelled to untangle the mysteries of Guild Wars 2's system and the wide variety of professions, other games call them classes, to make sure I am making the best possible choice that will carry me to having enough currency to just buy relevant gear for any alt I choose to play, so that the only dumb chore I'd have to do is farm disgusting hero points. So I watched a lot of guides. At some point I considered doing theoretical physics instead, so I can actually get paid and uncover the mysteries of the universe with some of the smartest people on the planet. But that would make too much sense, and I might actually feel a sense of happiness, purpose in life, maybe even satisfaction if I go down that road. So I decided to stick with Guild Wars 2 instead. That's the bad of it. The good of it is that all currency is account-wide, so as I alluded, once I get the train going, the new character or new build friction should be minimal if at all present. I'm just spoiled and I wish there was no friction at all. Okay, at this point you're probably not wondering, why am I even doing all that? You probably don't really care, but I care, and I wonder. By the words of the great Huberman PhD doctor, and most likely a lot of other people before him, and also independently after him, there is only one currency, referring to dopamine. This is going to be a long one, but I will circle back to Guild Wars 2, I promise. Dopamine is the juice that gets us going the same way our computers, and that includes your phones, operate on ones and zeros, which is basically yes signal and no signal. Meaning, it doesn't really matter what I do, so long as it gives me my fix. I'm a dope fiend. We all are. And yes, I'm aware this is way oversimplified. Circling back to Guild Wars 2 and the current day and age we live in, dopamine dispensers are everywhere. So why choose Guild Wars 2 over another one? The gameplay. That's the important part. I can play idle heroes or whatever and get bursts of dope when the things flash and tells me I won or whatever happens in those games. But I don't do that. Why? Because if both offer me the same thing, and again that's the only thing that anything really offers, the only thing that matters is how it delivers that. Yes, I said all those words just to tell you in an unnecessarily roundabout way that I find the actual gameplay of whatever game I play very important. And I wanted to communicate that so I can explain how I feel about the gameplay of Guild Wars 2. You press buttons and things happen, we all know that. But how do you press buttons and what things happen? From my rudimentary understanding of the combat system of the game, your outcomes are the following. 1. You deal damage through big numbers. 2. You deal damage through many small numbers. 3. You deal damage in either of the aforementioned ways except less, but you also buff the whole party with one of two important buffs. 4. You keep people alive and provide a ton of buffs. There are many different ways to press buttons to get those outcomes in the form of different builds and different classes, which again are called professions in Guild Wars 2, where everyone is supposed to pick the ones they jive with. And whatever you choose, you also run around avoiding red circles, saving specific buttons for specific situations, moving props around the battlefield, and otherwise interact with general encounter mechanics. This only covers PvE. I know the game has PvP as well, and that's all I know about it aside from the no farm required bit, so that's all I'll say about it. Based on my limited experience with the game so far, the systems have enough complexity to require a decent amount of focus when playing, which is a good thing. If I felt like what I did was difficult, I would get more dopamine points. That's a good thing. A possible future worry is that given that the game operates on a few concepts stuck together, that being DPS rotation, combo fields, a few different buffs, and whatever the specific encounter mechanics are, it is very possible that once muscle memory settles in, the encounters require less and less focus, so the only real source of dopamine remains acquisition of new, shiny stuff, which is not my jam. I can acquire shiny new stuff with continuously interesting gameplay attached through other games, until those games get boring for different reasons. I'm a spoiled modern day rascal, what can I say? Now, my future projection is that if that does indeed happen, I can switch class, build, role, or do different content in the game, meaning that in theory, even if it is possible for all that to get exhausted before new content drops, it should still be a good amount of enjoyment before it gets to that point. And I do enjoy rotating games anyway, so I'm feeling good about my future with Guild Wars 2, despite this being essentially a rant video. Oh, speaking of ranting, that reminds me, there are so many things in Guild Wars 2 that a good amount of my time playing the game is spent on the wiki, trying to figure out what that thing in my inventory is and how to interact with it. I suppose that's just one of the prices that needs to be paid for a horizontal progression MMO. Now let me finish this dastardly long video with a purely positive note. Almost purely positive. The story. Honest to the All-Father Zeus and Perun, I heavily tried to ignore it. However, I assume to save some time on making cinematics, the developers had some conversation bits playing the game world and I could not find a way to skip them. But at the same time, the quest doesn't progress until they're finished talking. So I heard bits and bobs of the story and... damn! I'm not sure how good the story is, but I'm sure that the writing and voice acting of the characters is top notch. My absolute favorite part is that my character, despite being a random player creation, is not a blank slate, so we as players can make meaningless conversation choices to make us feel like we're part of the story. I hate that. It leads to a bland and unimportant main character whose only purpose is to be a vehicle for the story and a window for us players to experience it. Not the commander in Guild Wars 2. My character actually has a personality. She's not bland, tasteless, run-of-the-mill responses person. And I really like her. Her and the Scooby gang. I don't actually know how it came to be a gang. I totally skipped most of the story until random bits from Heart of Thorns, so I don't really know anything. And still I am impressed. So much so, in fact, that I intend to play through the whole story in order and pay attention to what's happening on an alt, despite it not being tied to any meaningful system progression that I am aware of, except for getting mastery points, but even then I could just skip all the cutscenes and blitz through the whole story on mute while listening to some podcast, if I'm too lazy to go claim the mastery points scattered around the map. Despite all that, I'm actually quite excited to experience the story. You know, once I scrape enough gold to purchase the 2 Living World seasons that I'm missing. I hope the writing holds up throughout. 12 years of story is bound to be massive. I might do a follow-up video once I dig deeper into the endgame activities and have chunked at least some portion of the story. Maybe? No promises. That's it. Video over.